isolation. Before you call me names, hear me out. I contemplated long and hard on whether this was a good idea. I've always been on the fence about this because I don't want to inadvertently bring home the virus. Maybe I would contract it during transit, or worse, maybe I already have it and I would bring it home, and I don't want that to happen. But then again, I was based in Quezon City for work and I'm currently unemployed. So I was paying rent, very, very expensive rent, and high living expenses using money that I didn't earn. So basically I was living off of an allowance from my parents, which is ridiculous at this age because I have already been financially independent for a long, long time now. Trust me, if I had any other options, if I had better options, I would stay where I was. I would stay in Quezon City. But now I'm here, don't worry. I took all the necessary precautions before coming here. I went on a 14-day quarantine. Before that, I actually didn't go out that much. I haven't been more than 2 blocks away from where I live since March. I've only been out for groceries, ATMs, and all the necessary precautions were in place when I did all of those. I've also been monitoring my temperature and my saturated oxygen with a pulse oximeter since I got this in June. So I was actively afraid of having the virus. It's ridiculous to think about it, but the only time I've probably been exposed was when I actually processed my travel documentation. So imagine not going out for 14 days straight, no exposure with anyone whatsoever, and then right after that, you go to various government offices with all the people and wait in line for several hours. And they tell you that you're all set to fly home. So the first thing I did was go on a 14-day quarantine, and after which I went to the barangay hall of my place of origin, which in this particular case, Barangay Project 6 in Quezon City. So there I got a certification from them. So they certified that I was not exposed to anyone, that I am not a PUM or a PUI, and that I have also done my 14-day quarantine. But the truth is they did not monitor the quarantine, so how they were able to issue that certification without actually checking on me, without actually monitoring is beyond me. So the next step after getting that barangay certification is a medical certificate from the City Health Office. So I went to the Quezon City Hall where the City Health Office is also in the complex. We actually set up the processing of the medical certificate outside. So you have 2 walkways. If you're familiar with Quezon City Hall, you have 2 very long walkways, and then you have the lobby. So those 2 walkways were occupied by people who were trying to get their medical certificates. And then once you're done with all the lining up, you go to the lobby where there will be doctors that will entertain you and give you the certificate. So it was very hard. It was a very long process. I mean, it wasn't hard, but the wait was so long. So the first time I went there, it was already 1 p.m. and the security guard told me, a lot of them actually told me that they already did their cut-off at 7 a.m. So 7 a.m. is quite early because, as you know, government offices don't even open until 8 a.m. So for all the slots to be filled up by 7 a.m., people must have lined up very early. So the next day, I went back and I waited in line. That was before 6 a.m. and I was already on the second walkway. So you have here a line at the lobby, and then the line goes on to the first walkway that connects to the second walkway. I was on the second walkway. I hope I'm making sense. Basically, I was towards the end, almost run out of slots. So people still started coming, and at 7 a.m., actually it was before 7 a.m., we already reached 500 and they already stopped people from lining up. So I was very, very lucky, because if I didn't make it, if I didn't go there early enough, I wouldn't have been able to be processed that day. I would have to return the next day. So from 6 a.m., I waited in line with all these other people. There was a system in place. We were physically distanced, even more than 1 meter, so probably 2 meters. And then the wait was just so long. I was finished before 1 p.m. So that means from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1. Around 7 hours. I waited for 7 hours. But when I got to see the doctor, or one of the doctors, the checkup was just less than 1 minute. So 7-hour wait, 1 minute checkup. And it wasn't much of a checkup. Basically, they took my temperature from the infrared thermometer that they use on foreheads. They used the same on my hand, noted my temperature, and then they asked me if I experienced any symptoms within the last 14 days, to which I said no, and then the doctor stamped my medical certificate and then signed it. And that was it. Basically, I was certified that I'm allowed to fly. I'm medically fit to fly with just those precautions. So I don't know if that's how it is with other LGUs, but that's how it was with Quezon City. They took the temperature and they asked if we had any symptoms. And surprisingly, or not surprisingly, there were people in line who were coughing, like not just clearing their throat, because otherwise it would be a one-time thing if you clear your throat. But if you were really coughing, you would do it repeatedly. And there were people who were doing that. And when they approached the doctor and the doctor asked them if they had any symptoms, they said no. So it's really up to you to be faithful to the precautionary measures or the safety measures. So the thing is, we're gonna get through this pandemic depending on how we take care of each other. So as much as possible, please be responsible. The thing that worried me a little bit was that when you reach the lobby, there was a tent there. When you're about to see the doctor, you still have to wait a little bit more. There's still a little line when you get to the lobby, and you're not as physically distanced there. So if we had like 2 meters of space between yourself and the next person while we were waiting at the walkways, in the lobby you basically have less than 1 meter, which I don't think is advisable. But maybe they're still working on their system. Maybe Quezon City is overwhelmed. There were quite a lot of people there. Even after the cutoff, people were pleading they would miss their flight. They already had their flights booked, things like that, where they were only coming back because their medical certificates expired. So medical certificates have validity. In the case of Quezon City, I went there August 25, and the medical certificate is supposedly valid until September 8. But the Dipolog City LGU would only issue a certificate of acceptance if the medical certificate was taken within 5 days before their travel. So it quite varies per LGU of destination. But after that, I was happy to get my medical certificate, and then I went to PNP station, QCPD station 2. My battery died, that's why it's already dark outside. I have to redo the last part of the video. Where was I? Okay, so after I got my medical certificate from the Quezon City Hall, I went directly to the PNP Station 2 in Barangay Masambong, and that's where I was supposed to get the travel authority. But then again, I went there and they told me that the processing is supposed to be online. So it was my fault. I didn't know. I should have researched. And it was actually a very good thing that you don't have to line up to get a travel pass. You just have to send all your documents online and then they would respond immediately with a travel pass. It was very efficient. It took a very, very short time. I was emailing the documents they asked for during the taxi ride home, and I was able to get it right before I arrived at my destination. So that was very efficient. Shout out QCPD Masambong Station 2. And so I had all the documents I needed to travel back home. So yesterday, Saturday, I was able to go to the airport. I took a car, a Grab car, and it was also contactless. So they don't accept cash. They only take Grab Pay or credit card payments. They have a plexiglass barrier, no mask, no face shield, no ride. So that was a very good precaution on the side of Grab. And so I reached the airport. Everything also was in order at NAIA Terminal 3. So the same protocol. We have a disinfection mat. They took my temperature. They checked all my papers before even allowing me to enter the terminal. And they sprayed alcohol on my hands. You have to do your check-in to get your boarding pass at the kiosk or online. After that, you just have to do a bag drop. At the bag drop, it was also contactless. Pretty much, Cebu Pacific did a very good job. They had a very good contactless system in place. There was a plexiglass barrier at the bag drop counter. They don't touch any of your documents. You have to hold up your requirements and they will take a photo of it, or they will take note of certain things. They would scan your boarding pass. But it took a long time. So it was the same bag drop line for all domestic flights. So other people who are going to other places are in the same line as you. And it really took a while because a lot of people got offloaded. So the attendant would check their requirements, and some would have invalid medical certificates, some would lack certificate of acceptance, some OFWs would have expired or lapsed swab tests, because apparently that's required for OFWs. And so it took a while because people who were turned away would plead or would ask questions on how or when they would be able to board the flight, something like that. So they actually advise you, instead of going to the airport 2 hours before your flight, they advise you to go 3 hours before your flight with everything. Cebu Pacific sends out a pre-boarding guidelines. You have to fill out a certain form online. They just ask for your details and if you already have the documents and whatnot. They also remind you to bring your own pen so you won't have to use common pens that other people have used. So that's very good on the part of Cebu Pacific. And everything went well. It was seamless. They knew what they were doing. If you tell them the destination, they would already know which requirements apply to you. Like in our case, they don't ask us for swab tests, but in other LGUs, they would ask for swab tests. Some would ask for rapid tests and things like that. In the case of the Dipolog LGU, they only asked for medical certificate, the travel pass, and certificate of acceptance, and that's pretty much about it. And so I went to the pre-departure area immediately. A lot of shops were closed. Very few restaurants were open, no Krispy Kreme. There weren't a lot of people. Most of the boarding gates are empty. But when I reached my assigned boarding gate, there were a lot of people, and that's how I knew that the flight is probably full, and indeed it was. At the terminal, there were markers on the floor. The seats were marked with where you can sit, where you can't sit, things like that. So there was physical distancing, and also boarding was contactless too. They asked you to hold up your boarding pass and your ID, and then the attendant would check it without touching. And then you would be asked to get a declaration form, which you'll have to submit once you arrive. And the boarding was done systematically. They asked people to board according to rows. So those who were at the back were first to board, 4 rows at a time. So that way, when you're already seated, there will be no one walking past you. But as far as physical distancing goes, it ends once you enter the plane. The flight was full, as I mentioned, and so you are seated next to another passenger. I actually tried to pick my seat right before checking in. I checked all the assigned seats and I chose a seat with an empty row. I chose an empty row, so I would have supposedly an entire row to myself, but since the flight is full, of course, everything eventually got occupied. Actually, the only part that I didn't like about how Cebu Pacific went on with a new normal, so a full flight I don't think is advisable. Although the air is clean, they have HEPA filters, you're still breathing the same air that other people have breathed out. So you're in the same space, breathing the same air as 150 or so other people, and you are there for 1 hour and 30 minutes, 1 hour and 20 minutes for the entire duration of the flight. As for the flight attendants, it was also contactless. So once you enter, they spray your hands with sanitizer, they show you your seat, but that's pretty much about it. They don't assist you with your luggage, so you store your own luggage. They don't collect trash, no in-flight entertainment, no games. They're no longer selling snacks, they're no longer peddling those tiny planes, their merchandise and the neck pillows and all those other stuff that they used to sell. And they were clad in full PPE, so they were wearing masks. They had a long sleeve PPE over their usual uniform. So that's quite a different sight than usual. At Dipolog Airport, they only allowed disembarkation by row. So that was again very systematic. You're not allowed to stand up, get your luggage until your row is called. So they let the first ones, the ones in the first rows, disembark first, followed by the next few rows. So it was very systematic. Before entering the airport, they check your temperature, they let you step on the disinfection mat, so the usual protocols, spray your hands with sanitizer, and then they have people there, they have personnel that will collect your self-declaration forms, and then you can enter the airport. So once you're there, the physical distancing also goes away once you're inside the airport. I was able to see that there was a system in place. There are markers on the floor as you claim your baggage, but I think there's just a little bit of an issue when it comes to the enforcement. So I'm gonna put a picture here. Those people in PPEs, those are not passengers. They were from the airport and they would flock people as soon as you enter. So they were basically porters and they will surround you. Like a lot of them would go to you and ask if you need help with your baggage. So they basically were not afraid that we were LSIs, that we came from Manila. They were more concerned about their livelihood, which is unfortunate. But I was happy to get the service of a porter because I had no idea what to do. Maybe I missed out on the guidelines or some information, but I don't know. I had no idea where to go or what to do, and it was the porter who helped me out with everything. So he ushered me towards where you would register for the Stay Safe app. He ushered me towards the bus that would take us to the holding area. So it was very good thinking on Dipolog City LGU. buses. So those from other localities were on different buses. Those who were on my bus, which was about 14 people, we were all Dipolog City LSIs. So they brought us to the holding area at Satellite Market, and then there were already vans there that took us to our respective isolation facilities. So here I am in my isolation facility of choice. This is not free. We are paying here on a daily basis, but there is an option to be in a free isolation facility. In the case of my barangay, which is Barangay Estaca, there is Estaca Central School, which is a school converted into an isolation facility. But my parents thought that it would be better if I stayed here. I have a barangay tanod guarding my door right outside my door. I'm gonna show you here. Maybe not at this very moment, but there's usually someone there. The barangay hall is right next door, which means that if something happens, I'll have the help I need. This is a pension house located very close to where I live, about 5 to 6 houses away. So my parents are able to bring me my meals. I am extremely grateful that I even have this privilege, that I am able to come home and that I have a family to fall back on. I'm not sure if everyone has that privilege. And as to the future, it's still uncertain. I don't know whether I'll be able to find a job here as a chemist. Maybe I'll just wait out the pandemic and return to Manila, or maybe I'll stay here for good. It depends on the situation, but for now, I am happy to be home. I shall remain optimistic of the future.